Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session of our weekly CAD Chat webinar. Today's topic is about how to streamline your electrical harness development process. Basically, using SOLIDWORKS Electrical to generate wiring harnesses. Excuse me. I'm going to deviate a little bit from our agenda that you see on your screen. I am going to talk about the software itself a little bit in the beginning, the SOLIDWORKS Electrical schematic software and the SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D. Then I'm going to jump into the schematic. Got an existing 2D schematic of a harness that we can interrogate it. Then we're going to jump into creating a harness from scratch on the 2D side, create a 2D schematic of another harness from scratch. We're also going to add a manufactured part to the database, SOLIDWORKS Electrical database. And then we'll jump into the 3D side of things. On the 3D side of things first, we'll take that new manufactured part, the SOLIDWORKS model that's representing that manufactured part, and add some intelligence into it. Then we're going to route the wires in the cable, or route the wires in the two harnesses. We're going to generate a flattened route to make a 2D drawing of that harness. And then finally we're going to go back into electrical and generate reports on bills of materials, things of that nature. So the common electrical design process. You first start off with a drawing. Typically a drawing is going to be in AutoCAD format. You draw your lines, you put your symbols in there, and then you document this information. Documentation is basically creating bills of materials, creating a bill of material, what components are needed, wire list, what wires you need, how long, and also a from to, so somebody can actually wire the thing up. And then somebody checks it. Excuse me again. So somebody checks it. If you make mistakes, you have to go back to the beginning, change the drawing, change the documentation, and then look at it again until everything is good. Well, with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, we can streamline the process quite a bit. With SOLIDWORKS Electrical itself, the 2D side of things, on the 2D side, the 2D schematics have a lot of intelligence built into them. There is a SQL database behind the SOLIDWORKS Electrical. So the database has a database of symbols, 2D symbols. These 2D symbols can have manufactured parts associated to them or components, so that it knows that that symbol is representing this part. And also the lines are intelligent. Also the lines are representing wires. It knows that this line is representing this particular wire. So then it can then automatically generate your bills of materials. And then if you have the 3D, electrical 3D, on the 3D side you can do your wiring harnesses, your route wires, or your route cables, and that will give you the lengths of the wires and the cables that you need to generate your wire cable list. And also back to the 2D side of things, for the from to list, the 2D side knows that this pin on this connector goes, there's a wire going from this pin on this connector to this other pin on another connector. So that electrical process is now pretty much automated, so it should reduce tremendously the number of errors that you're going to be making, and it's going to be less time consuming because it's done for you automatically. Again, SOLIDWORKS Electrical is built on a built on a SQL database. So the database contains all the intelligence. Each project you create is going to be a table in the database that keeps track of all the components that are needed for the wire links and all that information. It is in a shared environment, so the 2D side of things, the schematics, symbols are built in the database. Then you can link different tables in the database, so you can link a symbol to a SOLIDWORKS model, for example, and also to a manufactured component. So everything is then tied together. We can also import or export from an ERP system to get your components from your ERP system into SOLIDWORKS Electrical. Since it is a SQL database, it's easy to customize. You got wizards to go through the process, step you through the process. We also have import tools to import in from, again, other databases such as your ERP system into SOLIDWORKS Electrical. And now I'm going to show you a quick little demo on how to build wiring harnesses in SOLIDWORKS Electrical. So let's just switch over to the 2D side of things. So here's the 2D side. Here is a harness that's already been done. Here's your connectors. And here's your wires going between the connectors. If I look at this connector here and go to the properties of this connector, you can see that this connector is associated to this manufactured part in the database. In fact, this symbol is associated to 8 different manufactured parts. So there's a cap, here's the 6 pins, and there's a seal. Also, if I go to my circuits, here's my 6 circuits for the 6 connectors. When I click on the circuit, it will jump to the area on the schematic that's showing that particular component and that particular terminal. Now, just looking at this schematic, you really can't tell, for example, this wire right here. Is that one wire going in, or is that 2 wires going into that terminal? Well, again, there's a database behind it. So I'm going to go to my wire cabling order. And this is all the connection points that that green ground wire is connected to. So it's connected to C4, pin 8, C5, pin 1, etc. And if I click on it, it will jump again to that area of the schematic that shows that information. Down here at the bottom, this is telling me where or how the wires get from point A to point B. So wire 10 is going from T3 pin 1 to C6 pin 3. Wire 12 is going from C7, etc. to C6 pin 3. And I can quickly see here that I've got 2 wires going into C6 pin 3, or one going in, one going out. Basically, they're tied together. Here C4 pin 8, C4 pin 8, and C4 pin 8. So there's actually 3 wires connected to C4 pin 8. If I wanted to change the order in which the wires are going from point A to point B, I can select the wire. So for example, I could select wire 23, and it's going from C4 pin 8 to C5 pin 6, and then I could then select the connection point up here at the top, and then I could say replace origin with this point, or I could replace the destination with that point. Now this is good, so I don't need to do anything, so I'm just going to cancel out of that. I like the way the harness is ordered. And so that's an existing harness. Now I'm going to show you how you can create a brand new harness from scratch. Before I can do that, I've got a new connector that I need to add to our database. So I'm going to go to my library and my manufactured part manager. So here's where I get access to all my manufactured parts. There's thousands and thousands of manufactured parts in the database. I can import from an Excel spreadsheet additional components, or I can add individual components on the fly. The database is categorized into different classifications. There's connectors, there's circuit breakers, etc. So here I want to add a new connector. So I'm going to click my Add Manufactured Part. I can go to my Properties tab and give this part a part number. The reference here is the part number. So I'll give it a part number of the manufacturer. I'll give it a manufacturer. Call it Vance is a manufacturer. What class name is going to be connectors. library. For the library, I'm going to use a user created object. I'm going to leave the rest of this blank, but typically you would key that in. Now I'm going to go down here under illustration, what symbol I want for a 2D schematic to represent this manufactured part. So I'm going to select my connector 3-pin. And now I need to tell it what SOLIDWORKS model is going to represent that manufactured part. So I'll go to the next one, and let's see, let's go to my C drive. I'm going to the folder that has where SOLIDWORKS Electrical is storing the library. Now this could be on a shared network drive, but it'll be under program data, SOLIDWORKS Electrical. This is the default location. SOLIDWORKS and SLD PRT file, and then I'll go down to the advanced, and this is actually a new part file that I've inserted into here, and we'll make some changes to it a little bit later. So there's a model that we want to use to reference this symbol in this manufactured part. 2D footprint. I'm not going to do a 2D footprint right now. I am going to do a connection label. And I want to use this label right here to identify that it's a 3-pin connector. So I've got my metadata. I need to now make it a electrical part by going to my circuits and terminals. And I need to add the three circuits for the 3 pins. So I'm going to hit my add button under circuits and terminals. This is going to add a circuit. What type is it? Excuse me again. And it'll be a terminal. And then under terminals, I need to add a terminal and give this a mark. Well, this first terminal is going to be mark 1. So I'm going to add another circuit. This is also going to be for terminal 2. And add a terminal for it. We'll call this one 2 for the mark. And add the third terminal. Change it to terminal. And add the terminal for it and call it terminal 3. And I should have everything done. So I can OK this. Oh, sorry, I already have it there. I'll just put a -1 on it. So now I've got this terminal in here that I can use, or a manufactured part that I can use. Now there are different ways of doing this. I could insert a symbol, or I can insert the component and then add the symbol. Here I'm going to insert the component. Where do I want it? This is actually the location, the cab foam harness. I can right click on this and go to new component. And what kind of component is this going to be? It's going to be that connector that we just created. What mark do I want, or the root for the mark for this? I'm going to say P. Go to my manufactured part and circuits and search for connectors, and advanced is going to be my manufacturer to narrow the search down. Well, if I do an all, I'll just show you an all here. If I do an all, there's 598 different connectors in my database. And let's narrow it down, search it. And here's the one I forgot to delete from the previous time I ran this. And I'll just select the one I just created. Hit my plus button to add it. You can see here that it's got the 3 terminals. And I'll select it. And it should make it P1. And if I go down to my tree here, there's the P1 that I just added. So it's a component, but there's no symbol representing that component yet. So to put the symbol in here, I can just right click on the component and insert symbol. And it knows what symbol to use because we told it to use this symbol. Here's where I can change the orientation of it. I'm going to leave the orientation the same and drop it here. And now you can see that that's pulled the information from the database that this component is got a mark of P1. It's representing this manufactured part. Want to do another one of these? Control C, copy to the clipboard. Control V and paste it. And I'm going to drop another one down here. And you can see that it's using that same manufactured part, but it incremented the mark. It is pointing in the wrong direction, but I can just right click on it, change the orientation, and invert it to flip it. So I got my two connectors in here. Now I need to draw my wires in between the connectors. So I can go to my schematic and draw single wires. What wire style do I want to represent or have these lines represent? So I'll use this one here, the wire 18 gauge purple, and I want to draw 3 of them at a time to do 3 of them. And I can just click on that there and click here and then escape, and notice how it actually trimmed these back to the connection points. So I've got my lines there. I need to number my wires, so I can go to my process and number new wires. And I want to modify the existing wires, or without modifying the existing wires. Yes, I do not want to modify the existing wires, just number new wires. And there's wire 26, 27, and 28. The last step in this process to generate this wire harness is to select the components, the connectors and the 3 wires in this case, and right click on it, and I want to add it to a harness. So I've got my 2 components and the 3 wires selected. I want to add it to a harness. So I hit my OK button. And here's the harnesses that I have in this project. Here's one. One has already got wires assigned to it, and the components. So that was the one that was already developed for us. I've got a harness 2, H2. Now there are no wires associated with it, no components. If I did not have this H2, I could add a new harness. But here I can just select it, and I'll use this harness for those 2 connectors and those 3 wires, and add to harness. And select that. And now I can exit out of that. So there's my harness on the 2D side. Now I'm going to go to the 3D side. Here is the SOLIDWORKS model that's representing that manufactured part, the Vance 480700. And this is just a DOM part. Doesn't have to be SOLIDWORKS features in it. But I need to add some intelligence into this part. So I'm going to add, well, I need to add some electrical intelligence into the part, but to do that I'm going to add a sketch in here to define points in the sketch, and then I can use those points to define the location of the termination of the wires. So I'm going to select this face, insert a sketch on it, and sketch points. Wake up the centers of these pin holes. So I can snap to those. So now I've got a sketch that's got points in it that I can now use when I run my electrical component wizard. Electrical component wizard is the tool that's used to build intelligence into the file. It's a wizard base. The first page of the wizard is for me to select the left, right, top, and bottom faces of the component. In this case, I really don't need it. This is more for components where you put into an enclosure, where you may want, where it would know the size of the component, so that you could maybe specify the spacing in between the components, or if it were a terminal, Typically you want the terminals stacked together to where a face of one terminal is touching the face of the other terminal. So I would need that in those cases. But here, this is going to be out in space. I don't need that. So I can just go to my next. The next page is where I can define mate references. You're probably all familiar with mate references. That allows you to snap a part into position in an assembly when you add it to the assembly. Normally I would do that for this type of component, but to speed up the process I'm not going to. This time I'm just going to drop this connector out in space. And I'll go to next. And this is where I create those, in effect, the connection points or terminal points where the wires end. If I had not created that sketch with points in it, I would use this first one here to create connection points. And then I'd have to select something in the geometry to define the point. I'm going to use this one. This third one here is for cables, to create cable connection points. So I'm going to use the second one here. And now my property manager, I need to tell it which points in the model to connect to what terminals. So right now I'm at terminal 1. So I'll select this point right here. Hit my OK button. And you can see that it's bold, that it's done. And go to next one. There's 2. And then the third one. And now I can exit out of this. And it brings me back to the wizard. This is the last page of the wizard, so I can hit my finish button. And it's added some additional geometry in the tree, and you can see in the graphics area. If I wanted to change the properties of that terminal point, again, edit the definition of the feature. Stub length, here's where I can define the stub length. How long a wire I want coming out of a straight length of wire coming out of it. I'll just use the 2 millimeters here. To make it a little bit better of a part, if I just put it in the assembly now and route a harness, it would route individual wires for these. What I want to do is create what's called an EW path, and then electrical side, when we generate it in the electrical 3D, it will have the wires following the path. So what I want to do, I want to have it where it groups the wires together. And to do that, I can use this SOLIDWORKS electrical tool to create a route path. I want to create a new sketch. And it's just a warning here, okay. And let's draw a line at the origin of that, or the destination, I guess, of that middle pin. Use my tab key to define the different direction or the length of the line, and it should be along the Z direction. So basically what this is going to do, when the wires are routed in the 3D side, it's going to create a line or a wire that's 2 millimeters long, and then it'll branch over into here for that particular terminal 1. Same thing for terminal 3. And let's go ahead and save my model, and I'll exit out. Now here's a refrigerator. This is what our wiring harnesses were for. I'm going to use my tab key and hide all these skins. So hover my cursor over the face and it will hide that component. And it allows me to see all this stuff in here. So here's some wiring clips. Here's some grommets. Here's some connectors that we're going to route the harnesses through. I'm going to show the sketches. In this assembly there is an EW path sketch. It's basically that same type of thing that we just added to that component, the connector. But this is an assembly environment where you typically do it. And this sketch is actually used as a guide. The wires are going to follow this sketch path. And you can see here's the connector. And this sketch path doesn't have to go all the way to the connector. It will know that this path right here is the closest to it, so it'll jump from here to here. And then it goes down here and it goes up through this grommet, so it's going to force it to go through the grommet. Force it to go through this clip, wire clip. Notice here where it branches out, so one branch is going to go through this clip, another branch through this clip. This branch is going through that grommet, and basically it's routing it all the way from connector to connector, following those paths. So this is that existing harness. Let's go ahead and add the connectors that we created from scratch, our P1 and P2. Notice these do not have a check mark in front of them now. This one does. That basically tells me that this component is already in the assembly and this one is not. I could also hide already inserted components. And I will insert that component. And you can see that that is now checked. And let's insert that second connector. And this one, I'm going to rotate it around. Try that one more time. And get them to where they're kind of pointing towards each other. And I'm going to use that same tool that we did in this part file. I'm going to create another route path to basically connect these two together. And it just connect the dots. So now I'm ready to route harnesses. I want to route all the harnesses. That should do both of them at the same time. And what it's doing behind the scenes, it's looking at that 2D schematic, pulling information from there. That 2D schematic says route the wires from this pin on this connector to this pin on this other connector. And it's using this EW path sketch as a guide to route the wires from point A to point B through this connector type of thing, or through this clip, or through this grommet. And it takes a minute or so, not too long. Yeah, let's save that. And now it's working on the second one, and this one should be real quick since it's real simple. I'm going to hide the EW path sketches, or hide all the sketches, to let you see what's going on behind the scenes. So here's the ring terminal. There's the green wire, the ground wire going from there into here. Then it's bundled together, and there's wire going into here. The green wire is going to this pin over here. Actually, you can tell by the diameter here, this is bigger diameter, so there's actually more than one wire going to that terminal. And you can see where it's going through. Kind of hard to visualize, but it's going through here, through this grommet into the box, and going probably to another terminal, or through a clip to get to point B. And here's the one we created from scratch. So basically it was simple, going from this connector, the 3 pins, and there along here to the 3 pins here. So that's on the 3D side, how to create the wiring harness on the 3D. These harnesses are actually created as sub-assemblies. I want to flatten this out so I can make a 2D drawing of it. So I'm going to right click and flatten route. There are different types of flatten routes that we can create. One type is an annotation. Annotation is not to scale. Basically what annotation does, it will create a flat of it, but it's not to scale. But it will give you the links of the wire so you know how much wire you need from here to there. The manufacturer is actually true scale to scale, and that is used for like nail board. So basically it does it to scale, and then you take that scale drawing and you print it out. You take that drawing and lay it on a board, and then you use that drawing and that board to manufacture your harness. For this one, we're just going to use annotation, and I'll just OK that. Well, actually, down here I should point out here too, where I could have it create a drawing of it right now. I'm not going to. I'm just going to flatten out the route, and you can see where it's got everything. It's 2D, and it's rotated back. Turn off the display of the planes to make it a little easier to work with. And you can see I can just take and reposition these, clean it up a little bit, or if I need to adjust how it's laid out, I can right click on one of the lines and edit flattened route. It brings up a tool to allow me to edit this flattened route. I'll use the drag tool. I can take this point right here and drag it maybe up there somewhere. Maybe make it a little closer. And also have a tool here that I can make vertical, and then I can just select the line right here and it'll make it vertical. A right mouse will actually make it vertical in the other direction. And let's make that one. Well, I'll make this one vertical, I think. And I'm going to go back to drag and kind of drag this one around a little bit to give us a little more room in here. But then once you get everything the way you want it, you can just OK this. And now, since I did not create the drawing when I created the flatten route in the beginning, I can just use the same tool and flatten route again. I should point out here too that also this tool is part of SOLIDWORKS routing that is part of SOLIDWORKS Professional. When you get SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D, it includes a subset of the tools that are in the routing package that's part of SOLIDWORKS Premium. So it gives us the ability to do a flatten route without having to purchase, or you can run SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D and not have to purchase SOLIDWORKS Premium to get the routing in Premium. Electrical 3D gives you enough tools to do the routing side. But anyway, I'm going to create a flatten route again, and this allows me to create a drawing of this edited flattened route. Tell it what template to use, what tables I want to include. I want to include the electrical table. I'm not going to include a cut list or a connector table. And OK that. And now it's going to create a drawing. And scale it to fit the drawing or the template. Here's the electrical table that we added. Here's our different components for the connectors and the quantities, and here's our wires, wire numbers, and the links of those. Now this does take a little bit of cleanup work, but it comes ballooned. And here, since this is an annotation view, here's a length of wire going from here to here. There's a length of all the little stubs coming out of there. There's that length. And I'm not going to bother cleaning up the entire drawing, but kind of get the gist of it. So that is how you create your harnesses and generate a 2D drawing of the harness that you can then send to fabrication. Last part of the demonstration is the reporting, the bills of materials. For this, I can go back to the 2D side, or I could have done it on the 3D side. But I'm going to go to my project. I'm going to generate reports. Now here's the list of reports I've got defined in this project, or they were defined in the project template. So basically the template said when you generate these reports. I could add additional reports to it. These are all out of the box. This report right here is a bill of material sorted by reference. And here's the different information. So I got the part number, the mark, description, quantity, and the manufacturer. Here's another one. Bill of material sorted by mark and by bundle. Also, any one of these reports, I could go in here and go to the properties of it and modify it. So, for example, I can go to columns, and here's the columns that are defined. If I go to my column manager, I can add additional columns. I can reorder the columns. And if you're real good at TSQL, you can actually generate your own reports. Fully customized reports. Here's a query that's generating this report here. There's another report, wires. And here's a drawing list of all the reports. Well, all the drawings, excuse me. And then I can use generate drawings. And what this will do, it'll generate drawings of all these reports and add them to the project. I could have also exported out to Excel or text file or XML. Now if I go to my drawings tab, here's bills of materials. So there's a bill of material. Here's the second bill of material. Here's the third bill of material. And I think this in here, 8, is just a continuation since it couldn't fit all on one page. And here's my list of wires. All of this information I can export out to DWG files or PDFs, e-drawings. So I've got all different kinds of export capabilities. But that is SOLIDWORKS Electrical and how you can generate wiring harnesses in SOLIDWORKS Electrical. If you have any questions about SOLIDWORKS Electrical, you can contact me, Wayne Matus, Wayne@progressiontech.com, or 877-967-5780, extension 295. If you would like to see a demo, you can go use the same number, and sales is going to be extension 1. Or you could go to our website, progressiontech.com, and select Get a Demo. Next webinar is going to be on SOLIDWORKS Enterprise PDM, managing your assets better and saving time with SOLIDWORKS Enterprise PDM, and that's going to be next Friday the 13th, March 13th. Then the following week on the 20th of March, we got the benefits of SOLIDWORKS certification. Certification, you might want to look into being a SOLIDWORKS certified professional, CSWP, or some of the other certifications that are available. I do thank you for attending, and we will see you next week.